From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Happy Veterans Day, everyone. Welcome to the CyberHub Podcast, November 11th, 2024. And to all of my fellow veterans, thank you for your service to our nation. This nation should and is eternally grateful to the brave men and women who donned that uniform, went to fight for our country, and came back home. And so thank you to all of y'all. And I know there's so many that watch the show. I know there's also many friends that I can say this to today. Happy Veterans Day to every single one of y'all. Thank you. Good morning, everyone tuning in. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you're ready to get into cybersecurity news because we've got a lot to talk about today, including a crushing cyber attack on Israel, TSA wanting to expand cyber rules. Really now? And then a whole bunch of vulnerabilities and patches that you need to be paying attention to this Monday morning. So without further ado, join me for a tradition here on the CyberHub Podcast. A coffee cup cheers. I've got my double espresso in this beautifully handmade mug that's made right here in these great United States of America. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. Brilliant. Let's go ahead and start with the cyber attack that took down about 30% of the financial system in Israel yesterday. The DDoS attack, which was a distributed denial of service attack, targeted payment gateway Hype's credit card product. The product is a payment processing that's used by many major retailers in Israel, including food retailers, gas, as well as shopping malls and anywhere else. The outage lasted, here they say it lasted an hour. I know firsthand it lasted close to 10 to 12 hours until systems started to get restored. The attack disrupted communication between card terminals and the wider payment system. They're saying that there was no capability of stealing information or payment. Now, if you're asking yourself, how did this happen? Israel's like the private public sector in Israel is very intertwined in terms of cyber. However, there's one exception. Hype is not considered to be critical infrastructure. And so their ability to connect to the Israeli CERT, which typically assists in these types of attacks, is able to recognize them and mitigate them even before the attack actually takes place. Wasn't required for Hype, meaning it was voluntary for them to actually connect with the CERT. The attack lasted until late in the evening hours yesterday. Many people left unable to purchase groceries or gas, had to go to ATMs and take money out of their bank accounts and whatnot, and those retailers were essentially severely impacted. The Iranians have already taken responsibility for the attack. I know that doesn't say that here in this specific article by the record, but the Iranians have taken responsibility for the attack already, saying this was part of the payback for the ongoing war that's now out of the shadows between Israel and Iran, and out front and public. So we'll see how this kind of plays out in terms of escalation between the two nations there. Obviously, there's a lot of tension. Iran has threatened an additional ballistic missile attack against Israel. That they're obviously kind of tried to walk that back since Trump was elected last week. We'll see how that kind of plays out there between Iran and Israel. Again, there's a lot to unpack with this specific cyber attack. Specifically, they targeted a financial services company with a DDoS attack. That DDoS attack impacted their availability, which impacted all the downstream retailers and customers subsequently. So, huge economic impact. Whether you like it or not, that's tens of millions of shekels that were lost yesterday in essentially commerce because people weren't able to actually take payments through their payment system. So it goes back to kind of having to really walk back that backup systems as well. But it kind of points out to the the need and the ability to have a backup payment system as a retailer. And if you don't, and I mean, some of these companies, by the way, that were impacted by this, like Carrefour, the French giant that has, multiple locations in Israel, how do you not have a backup payment system? Just saying, kind of, we'll see how that goes there as well. So there's that there. Israel obviously will likely retaliate against Iran, and we'll see how that kind of plays out between the two nations. A Texas-based oil drilling fluid system and composite matting provider announced to the SEC that they're dealing with the fallout of a ransomware that happened earlier last week. The company hasn't shared details on what exactly happened or how they gained access to their networks, or whether or not the threat actors, who they are, or anything like that. The incident is early on in its infancy here. The incident caused disruption. However, to their credit here, they were able to revert back to their old systems and continue to operate, so they didn't disrupt anything there as well. And again, a lot of challenge for the critical infrastructure industry there. But TSA, that's proposed for new pipeline and railroad cybersecurity rules, it's Monday morning, you'll have to excuse me, is moving to expand its directives for cybersecurity against, essentially, to the industries they're actually in charge of, like freight and passenger railroad, as well as rail transit and pipeline facilities. They're now saying that they're going to expand and codify previous directives, including reporting a cyber attack to CISO within 24 hours after identifying them, as well as doing annual cyber evaluation. More bus operators would fall under the new rules, which have been in development since 2022. Again, you're talking about Greyhound here. So since then, hackers have crafted more sophisticated attacks to target industrial machinery used in critical infrastructure such as pipelines and railroad operations. So there's that. Researchers have found destructive malware known as Pipeline back in 2022, and it makes equipment malfunction and causes safety problems. And again, that's a big one in critical infrastructure, is safety. And so they're really pushing on safety there as well. So we'll see whether or not TSA actually maintains this mandate. Ideally, all cyber should fall under CISA, and all other agencies should stay out of cyber. But there's that. We'll see. Debt relief firm solution provider Setforth is notifying 1.5 million individuals that their personal information was compromised back in a May 2024 data breach. The incident, the company revealed in a Friday announcement, was discovered on May 21st and prompted the activation of incident response protocols. On July 1st, Forth determined that the attackers accessed certain documents on its systems, including files containing personal information. The potentially compromised data, the company says, includes names, addresses, dates of birth, and social security number. Forth and Centrix provide cloud-based customer relation management solutions powered by the Setforth platform. The platform does allow businesses to collect and share customer information with their permission between its users. They've submitted a copy of the notification letter to the Maine Attorney General office. Again, 1.5 million people impacted. 12 months of free identity theft protection services will be given to everyone who was a victim of this cyber breach. If you haven't checked out our Substack, jamesazar.substack.com. We've got a lot to talk about there, including an article I published on Saturday, what to expect in cybersecurity from a second Trump presidency. And as of this morning, we know that the Senate is now in Republican control, and it looks like the House is also in Republican control, meaning they're going to have carte blanche for the next 2 years. We'll see exactly how that plays out for cybersecurity practitioners. We'll be watching it here on the show, as many of you will as well. We'll see what kind of impact that'll have on the private-public relationship here. A Palo Alto network expedition vulnerability patched several months ago is still being exploited in attacks, according to CISA. The vulnerability CVE 2024-5910 was patched by Palo Alto back in June. The security hole was described as a critical missing authentication issue that could allow an attacker with network access to Expedition to take over an admin account. Expedition is a tool designed to make it easier for users to migrate a configuration from a third-party vendor like Check Point or Cisco to Palo Alto. According to Palo Alto's advisory, configuration, secret credentials, and other data important into Expedition is at risk due to the issue. The cybersecurity giant updated its advisory on Thursday to note it learned from CISA that there are active exploitations of the vulnerability. This indicates that CISA learned from a third party about in-the-wild exploitation, or the agency discovered exploits itself during one of its investigation. No appears to be available about the attack exploiting it. However, less than 24 internet-exposed instances of expedition are still online. So technical details are available, and you can find all of that in our Substack after the show. Veeam, for their end, announced another patch for a high-severity vulnerability in their backup enterprise manager. This one could be exploited remotely and without authentication, making it significant, even though the CVSS score is 7.7. CVE 2024-40715 can be exploited by performing a man-in-the-middle attack to bypass authentication. To address the flaw, Veeam released a hotfix for Backup Enterprise Manager. That hotfix is 12.2.0.334, and it includes the hotfix in a repackaged image for Veeam Backup and Replication and Veeam Data Platform that were released back on November 6th. Veeam recommends that users apply the hotfix if Backup Enterprise version 12.2.0.334 is already installed, or use the latest Veeam Backup and Replication ISO to upgrade to that fix. If you're still using PyPi, which many of you absolutely and your development teams do, you may want to pay attention to a Python package named Fabrice. It's been presented and downloaded over 37,000 times, and it executes platform-specific scripts for Windows and Linux. The large number of downloads is accounted by Fabrice's typo squatting to the legitimate SSH remote server management package Fabric, a very popular library with more than 200 million downloads. This one, obviously, typo squatting doesn't get the same amount of downloads, but still gets significant ones, 37,000 by the time it was taken offline. The Fabric package is designed to carry out actions according to the OS it runs on. On Linux, it sets up a hidden directory. The shell scripts are decoded to grant execution permission, letting the attacker execute commands with user privilege. On Windows, it downloads an encoded payload, a base64, that is a VPS script created to launch a hidden Python script. The point, steal AWS credentials. Regardless of the OS, its main idea is to steal AWS credentials using Abato 3, the official Python SDK for AWS, allowing interactions and session management with the platform. Once a Abato 3 session is initialized, it automatically pulls the AWS credentials from the environment, instance, metadata, or other configured resources. The attackers then exfiltrate the stolen keys to a VPN server, which makes tracing the destination much more difficult. It's operated by M247 in Paris. That's the VPN server you want to pay attention to. And finally, in phishing news, hundreds of companies worldwide have been targeted with spear phishing emails claiming copyright infringement that actually delivers an info stealer. Check Point began to track the emails as they spread across the Americas, Europe, and Southeast Asia. They come from a new domain each and every single time. Hundreds of their customers have been targeted, indicating the real reach of the campaign may be far greater than what Check Point could actually see. The goal of the emails is to bait guilt-riddled victims into downloading the Rhodomothesis, a sophisticated info stealer equally capable of pilfering nation-state intelligence, or in this case, cryptocurrency wallet passphrases. Note to emails in the campaigns that they dubbed come from the same address, indicating that there's some kind of automation behind their distribution. This automation proves awkward in some circumstances, like an Israeli target received an email almost entirely in Korean and limits the email's ability to realistically impersonate known brands. Each one is made to seem as if it came from a legal representative of a specific known company. Nearly 70% of those companies come from either technology, like Check Point, or from media and entertainment industries as well. The profiles of impersonated brands weave in neatly with the story that the attacker peddles, which is a copyright infringement, and you need to take it down or pay a fine or whatever the case may be. But really what they're doing is they're downloading info stealers, and they're trying to get their hands on some of these devices with that as well. So something to pay attention to and update there as well. Happy Veterans Day to our friends over at the Security Institute, and happy Veterans Day to the good old folks at the whole cybersecurity initiative, Paul Cummings and the team there. We typically do Veterans November, to be honest. This year, unfortunately, we could just too much going on. We couldn't get it done in time. But again, to all of our veterans that are watching the show today, thank you so much for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you to the families that put up with men and women who go out and serve and have to move every few years and every time their deployment changes. and have to deal with their loved ones being away for a very, very long period of time. We hope we enter an era of peace for our veterans and strength. Until then, thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest. Until then, have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.